Hi, my name is Trey Grant, the founder and director of the Specs Movement. First of all, thank you so much for downloading our Specs material. We hope that this material will be beneficial to you, your family, and your community. The reason we produce this material is because we desire to facilitate creative conversations about race for the purpose of promoting racial reconciliation. However, the only way racial reconciliation can happen is through personal reflection, repentance, and redemption. We hope seeing life through someone else's specs will help you experience these 3 R's in your life. Now, do me a favor, make sure you subscribe to our Facebook page and our website blog and help us spread the word about the Specs Movement. In fact, if you would like to learn more about starting a Specs movement in your community, please go to our website, www.thespecsmovement.com/join-the-movement. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here. Thank you so much for carving out time to be with us and even kind of the prep for tonight. Appreciate you being here a ton. So it's good to be with you, and thank you guys for showing up. So we'll start with just asking you just a little bit about who Shiza is.
Absolutely. So I'm Shiza. I think you know that. I am an immigrant, American Muslim. My children tell me I am Muslim American because I wasn't born here, and they're American Muslim because they were born here. This is how they make that distinction to make sure I don't get that messed up. The first time I came to the US was when I was a kid, and my dad brought us to Disney to see Mickey Mouse. So that was my first interaction with the US, and I loved it. As a teenager, when I would have high school holidays, I would come spend time with my sister who was living in New York City at the moment, at that time. And so my favorite memories are watching Gilligan's Island and a lot of the Golden Girls. Those were allowed TV shows for me. And then I came here long term when I applied for undergrad. So I went to college here, and that was in New York City. I did my undergrad there at NYU. After which I went back to my home country. I'm originally from Pakistan, so I am born and raised there. Very much so, and maybe the accent will tell you that I say things wrong all the time. So, and then I moved back to the U.S. after I got married, and was in Miami, Florida. Very different cultural experience of America. So New York and then Miami, about 6 years or so, and then I moved to Texas. So very interesting experience here. So I will say that I'm very excited that Texas has grown. Just, I've been here about 10 plus years, and I have seen it change and morph, and the more diverse that it's getting, I'm loving it. Initially, it seemed a little bit challenging just because every state in the U.S. has a different culture. In my mind, if they have a McDonald's and a Walmart, then that means everything is the same. So, it's different. And so I've grown to love Texas. Now I'm a single mom with 2 children. My daughter is 10 and my son is 7, and they have taken the responsibility of raising me. So they're the bosses, and that's me in a nutshell. My professional life, I'm working on a PhD in family sciences, and I am a counselor. I am a marriage and family therapist and a counselor. I love, love, love what I do. So here we go.
Awesome. Thank you. So I have to admit, I grew up privileged to be part of the faith I grew up in, Christianity. Being the majority predominant culture from the beginning, or religion from the beginning, right? And so Christianity has been woven into kind of the fabric of the political system. Growing up, I'll be quite honest, it wasn't until about 15, 16 years ago that I even really knew anything about Islam or Muslims. That was sort of the starting point for me as a Christian, as an American, Islam. So
let
as
me
a
guess.
young kid, I thought, oh, well, all of a sudden there's Muslims in the country. That was it.
Yes.
And obviously I know that's not the case. So how many Muslims approximately live in America? How long have Muslims been in America?
Those are great questions, and I have a hunch, and I know we've spoken about this, that you realize that there were Muslims in the country when a certain tragic day happened in our country, which was horrible. So let me give you a little bit of background. So historically, it's a little bit unclear in terms of how long Muslims have been in the U.S. Some research shows that from the 17th century, at the time that we had slaves being imported into the U.S., a lot of them were practicing Muslims, and then they had to, because there was no freedom of religion, they had to hide their faith. So there are traces there. Also, Spaniard and Portugal migration into the U.S. because Spain had a huge Muslim population, brought about a lot of Muslims. And then the sizable recent migration that everyone started noticing was late 1800s, early 1900s, when Syrian and Palestinian and a lot of the Middle Eastern Muslims started coming to the U.S. So they've been a part of the American fabric for many, many more years than we've started paying attention. And then in the early 1900s, 1930s and 40s is when, as slavery was being, gotten rid of, a lot of the people had their faith, a lot of the African American community reconnected with Islam because they felt like they had the freedom to practice it. So yes, so for many hundreds of years, Muslims have been here. Would you like me to tell you about the population in the U.S.? Or?
Yeah, sure.
So there are anywhere, depending on what research you read, anywhere between 5 to almost 8 million Muslims. So, the Pew Research, Brookings Institute, the BBC, a lot of the established, credible research organizations have put a different number on it. But overall, it's about 1% of the U.S. population, an estimate. So about, on average, maybe 6 to 7 million. Do you know how many Christians there are in the U.S.? Anybody? Any guesses? About 237 million. And which makes the U.S. the largest Christian country in the world. So, and then Texas has a growing population of Muslims. Tarrant County, the last that I checked, because Steve keeps asking me questions I don't know the answer to, so I was like, oh my gosh. Tarrant County, as of 2010, was reporting about 40,000. So there's quite a bit. And a lot of people, Texas is, popularly known as the Bible Belt. But what I've noticed living in New York and Miami is that it's the faith belt. So a lot of people who are aligned with their faith live here because those family values, how to raise children, how to be together as a family is very common. So there are many, many Muslims migrating to Texas as well.
Yeah. Good. I mean, it was eye-opening for me just to even think about that. I considered that thought that I had, right? So like, as I was thinking about today, I just grew up with that misunderstanding that was sort of the moment in time where all of a sudden there were Muslims in America. Because admittedly, I didn't know a whole lot about Islam growing up. My family, we never talked about it. Growing up here, if you grew up here in Texas, right? What's the joke? There's a church on every street corner. And so I think we just take that for granted that everyone knows who we are. Everyone, even if you're not a Christian, you know the distinctions within Christianity. You can.
I'm just remembering a story. When I moved to Texas, I was at our neighborhood town square, and there was a couple of people who were handing out pamphlets for their church, and they came to me and they said, and welcome, and you look new, and I was like, yeah, I'm new, I've just moved. And they were like, well, why don't you come to our church? And they gave me the information, and I said, I'd love to visit, but I'm Muslim. And they were like, oh wow, what church is that? so I remember that, and I was like, never mind, I'll just come visit. And this is about 10 years ago, so yeah, things have changed.
Yeah. So before 9/11, I didn't have any context. After that, my assumption all of a sudden when I saw on the news is that Muslim men wore all Muslim men wore turbans, all women wore burqas, and then they sort of, you mentioned Sharia law, they stayed in the home. So that kind of gave me the media really gave me my perspective or my perception of Muslims. How true is that? Tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, so, the media, God bless the media. What I have learned about the media is that there's lots of media available in terms of information that is available for your consumption based on what you like to believe. So, if you like to believe that Muslim men wear turbans, which actually is Sikh men from India, they're not even Muslims, but they get victimized for hate crimes, so thank you for bringing that up. And that women cover and wear scarves, and they're oppressed, I promise you, you will find at least about 15 websites that will confirm your belief. And then if you want to believe otherwise, so it's like that Indian story, I don't know, the Indian chief, I heard it in undergrad that, this grandfather told this granddaughter the story, and I think it's a very popular folk story in the US that, inside us there are there's a fight between two energies. One is good and represents, goodness, understanding, love, compassion. The other is, representing greed and hatred and resentment and, misery and all kinds of negative stuff. And they're fighting constantly, and the granddaughter is like, well, who wins? And the grandfather says, it's the one you feed. And so I've noticed that about the media. It's like whatever you want fed, you will find it. And so unfortunately for the Muslim community, we got attention when 9/11 happened. Being a social scientist, I was looking at research, and there was like maybe under 300 articles published about anything about the Muslim community. Guess what? In 2005, there was 3,400 and up and coming. And were the topics positive or negative? It was always about terrorist population, extreme violence, and any negative element that is more social element was attached and presented. So then I don't blame people for believing what they believed in, because there wasn't any counter information. So the Muslim community is a very peace-loving community. In fact, the Muslim scholars, and not to mention that there is that, population, I would like to respectfully call them cuckoo, which I believe every faith has that population. It is a very dark element of the Muslim community that represents hatred, that use faith to really justify their negative, disgusting agenda. This is my view. The Muslim community has been victim to most terrorist-based attacks. It's really not, it's not the opposite. So that population is less than 1 to 2%. It's like Muslims versus Christianity in the US. But unfortunately, that is the population that gets media attention. Because fear sells. It sells so much better. Because I can make you do certain things when I activate your limbic system, and you're scared. And then you're like, okay, what do I need to get rid of to feel safe? And so that has been fed into, and it's a very peace-oriented community. They thrive in their organizations. They are civic citizens who are contributing citizens of community. It is the second largest faith minority of women that are most educated. So there's the oppression stuff. As a faith, Islam has the most amount of rights in many elements, like property division, like divorce. You can just say, I don't get along with my husband, and that's grounds for divorce in Islam. So, there's not, so there are many, many elements, but unfortunately, the ones that really make it are the ones that cause conflict, create fear, and make you scared. So, I don't know if that helps.
No, yeah, it's good. It's interesting. I think, like I said, Christianity being around, since really the beginning of, depends on the beginning of how you translate that, but, we take it for granted that people know about our faith, and so without the majority of people not really having a whole lot of context for Islam or Muslims, I think really before 2001, it leaves so much space for the imagination, right? I mean, you have no context to attach anything to, or you don't have any previous experiences really to say, oh no, that's not true. As I was listening to you talk, I thought about, I have so many friends who are not believers, right? And so I would hate for, I wouldn't love for them to identify me with some more extreme views within Christianity. And I don't even actually really have to, because there already is enough context for them to sort of latch onto. So, for instance, there's a church in, I think, Middle America where they get out and protest, funerals and what, and they're sort of seen, I think, by the majority of our country, and even within the Christian sort of church, is that they're really, they don't speak for everybody. But I don't have to do a whole lot of defending of that, because most people know that,
That's not
there are distinctions, there are clear distinctions, and because we're the dominant faith, if you will, like you said, 237 million quote unquote Christians. I don't have to do that, but I still feel a little bit of that. I still feel the need to sort of hold on. That guy that's really judgmental, he doesn't speak for me. He doesn't speak for my faith, and I don't have to do a whole lot of that, but I still feel like I have to do a little bit of those distinctions, even to my friends who are not believers, because I want to, I don't want to have the wrong interpretation of my faith. And so what distinctions, in Islam are there in that sense?
Absolutely, and so there are many. So let me just put it this way, and I want to make sure that I make that distinction. Are there Muslims who are jerks? Absolutely. Are there Christians who are jerks? Are there, how many of you, and you don't have to, but just smile or nod or something, how many of you have relatives that are in your family that you're not really proud of? That they've made decisions that you would never make, and you're almost like, oh my gosh, and then how would you feel when you get introduced to somebody that really matters, and the first thing someone is saying in making the introduction is, hey, do you know he's related to that person? So that's what's the experience of the Muslim community right now. It's like me saying, well, I'm in a group of Christians, please don't kill me right now, but, you guys promote killing people who are different from you, right? Because the Ku Klux Klan, that's what Christianity is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody's going to smack me. And I think that I would be doing the biggest injustice to really evaluate Christianity from one of its darkest elements.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be pathetic. Mm-hmm. Because for every one of those people, there are millions who do so much good and stand up for injustice and are really, in my view, righteous and devoted Christians. So that is not a representation of Christianity. We all have those people that were like, ugh. And then even if you come to the family system, every race has a stereotype that has been labeled, and it's showing a dark element. So I'm going to take a risk here, and please participate if you can. What are some of the stereotypes you've heard about Muslims? And we'll do others too, so don't feel bad. And I'm not thinking it's your view, but it's out there. So give me some views on, what you've heard. Muslims are
Terrorists.
Terrorists. Thank you. What else? Keep going.
Like you said, how the women take
The women are oppressed.
Second-class citizens.
What else? There's like a few more. Come on, guys.
That they hate Americans.
They hate Americans. That's like a classic. Because I want to make sure that you understand they exist. There's all this aggression that they show in almost blackmailing and putting death threats on all the imams and religious leaders who openly, publicly published in a published way. So they're on this hit list. So that's the, but in terms of percentage and volume, it's a non-existent population. Unfortunately, that's getting too much media attention. Muslims they're very focused. Immigrant families are typically education focused. How many of you know a doctor who's Muslim? There's quite a few of them. Healthcare professionals, teachers, homemakers, PTO moms. I mean, it's just as regular, totally scared of their teenage kids growing up. You know, we all share that. And, you know, so it's a very, you know, I wish I could say there's some kind of horns coming out of the regular population. It's just like, yes, we all pray different, but we respect faiths. Just like I believe my Christian friends and the Christianity I've experienced respects other faiths. They don't push to convert. They don't, you know, it's not the shoving of the faith in each other's faces kind of thing. It's tolerant. The community believes in pluralism. So I encourage you to go visit a mosque. If you know someone, well, now you know me, so feel free to say hi. I'm in the neighborhood. That, you know, there's nothing very outstandingly different about Muslims, just regular people,
Yeah.
in my view.
Yeah, that's good. I think, you know, even thinking about how media and really what Hollywood has really sensationalized. I was listening to an interview recently where this one guy who was an actor and he was going out for a role and he went to the studio or whatever, and they said, oh, you know, you're Muslim. Oh, great. Here, you know, he's a turban. I mean, that's what, so their ignorance was a turban. He's like, you know, it's chic anyway. It's not even Muslim. It is
Yeah.
Islam. But here's a turban. You're going to play terrorist. And so his first thought was like, really? Like, can I play a doctor or something? Like, can I play something else? And so, because it really has sensationalized. And I think, you know, to put it in a different like perspective, you know, growing up, you know, and when I was young, like when I just started dating, you know, my first like relationship with a girl it wasn't great. And I was young, right? I was like 18 or something. So right off the bat in high school, I thought, you know, girls are terrible. Like all girls are terrible. I actually joined this. My friends and I had this club. I went and saw this band recently called MXPX.
Did you know about this?
No. MXPX is a punk rock band. They have this song, right? And part of the song is GSF. It's Girls Schmirls Foundation. This is just bear with me for 1 second. I have a point. But you know, the thinking was like all girls are bad, right? Everyone's seen the movie, right, where the girl or the guy has a terrible breakup, and all of a sudden, all girls are terrible. Stay away. Or all guys are terrible. And I think. You know, of course, you know, level-headed friends are like, no, it's not all. There's just, you know, there's someone else out there, and it isn't until you have more experiences, more interactions, you realize, okay, wow, not every girl was terrible. I met my wife, you know, when I was 21. She's fantastic. She's not terrible at all. So the myth of all women are bad, you know, and is, you know, it's just been sensationalized, and so I think it's important for me. To continue to interact. Because I had no, you know, before I had no contact.
You know, thank you for bringing that up. It's just reminding me of a story. I spoke somewhere to mental health professionals and attorneys in Grapevine. That I was invited to a session. And, you know, I really welcomed because that person was being earnest. They said, you know, does Islam promote being rude and mean to others? And, you know, of course, my anxiety level was building up because the weight of my faith is on my shoulders. And I was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, you know, I've had 2 interactions with Muslims. One person did not even make eye contact with me. And one person I was trying to hold the door for, and, you know, they were really, like, she explained something that, to me, sounded really nasty. And I felt so lucky that I was wearing my head right. And I think I've told you guys the story that, you know, I said, tell me, if it wasn't for the sensationalizing of the media, would you have considered that that has anything to do with their faith? Because they absolutely sound rude and mean, but where did the faith come in? So we don't, like, you know, all of you, and sometimes we have mean moments. I'm a mom. Yesterday I was really mean. But how does that relate to Islam? I don't know. So a lot of times the way it's attached, and remember, we're consuming information from the media in bits. And whatever's repeated over time, you know, it's like my son telling me, Mom, I had to get laundry detergent, and he's like, Mama, are you making sure we're getting tied with bleach? And I was like, I was looking at the generic one, and he goes, no, because it cleans better. And I was like, and you know this because, he's 5, because on Nickelodeon, that was being one of the ads that he said he saw over time. So I knew where it came from. And so similarly, the sensationalization, unfortunately, has just created those brain connections. where we just automatically go to that negative information right now.
Yeah.
And you nailed it. It's the sensationalization
Yeah.
of the media.
Yeah. We have time for one more question or point, if you will.
Sure.
Before we show the video, but the question I think most people ask, okay, so what does that look like then for me, right? I don't have any context. People in this room, people that may watch this video later, say, what do I do, in terms of breaking down these stereotypes? I think the answer is somewhat simple, but what would that look like?
So first of all, maybe a little piece of what that looks like. I am a person of privilege, so I don't experience it as much as some of my friends, some of my colleagues do. Some of my practicing friends who cover their head do. Because the moment they cover their head, they get a label of oppressed. The moment my guy friend who wants to keep a beard gets the label of conservative because he's practicing his faith. I want to say up until even the 40s and the 50s, I remember pictures of seeing when Christians went into a place of worship, they covered their head. I mean, that was common practice. So I don't know when it became a sign of oppression, but that's what happens. It shows up when and I know I'm repeating this, but it really hit home for me because I thought I live in a very educated city. When my 5th grader went to school, and in her social studies class there was a 19-minute video shown to her about Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Islamic extremism. And I feel so blessed that she is, my child. I was freaking out because she said, "Mama, it just didn't sit well with me." So I had to have a chat with Mr. Christopher. And I just